The elevator pinged open just as Chloe's phone buzzed in her pocket. She yanked it out, glancing at the screen with a groan. Another group chat blowing up with co-workers gossiping about schedules. Another reminder she'd forgotten to pick up her uniform from the back. Her shoulders were stiff, her feet sore from 12 hours of standing behind the Burger King counter, and all she wanted was her small apartment, a shower, and the bed that seemed to be begging her name. So she rushed. She barely noticed the man until she literally collided with him. "Oof," she yelped, almost losing her balance. Her shoulders slammed into his chest, and instinctively, she stepped back. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she muttered, waving her free hand as if that could undo the force of impact. She started to step around him, brushing past quickly, hoping to escape the embarrassment without needing to look at him too long. But then his hand shot out. Firm. Inescapable. "Wait," he said, his tone quiet but sharp, and he grasped her wrist. His eyes met hers, dark, steady, and entirely unreadable. "Why are you in such a hurry?" Chloe froze. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She didn't want to tell him about her long, exhausting shift, about the headache forming behind her eyes, about how every single bone in her body was screaming for her bed. She just wanted to get away. I have to go," she stammered, tugging at her wrist. He didn't release her immediately. His grip was firm enough that she could feel it press into her skin, but not harsh. It was the kind of hold that demanded attention. She yanked harder, heart racing. "Please, let go." Finally, he let her free. She stumbled back a step, rubbing her wrist, cheeks hot. She started to walk, briskly, determined to pretend none of this had happened. Then she noticed the blood. A thin trickle along the corner of his lip, crimson against the pale skin of his face. Her stomach lurched. Oh no," she whispered, taking a tentative step toward him. He wiped at it with the back of his hand without looking at her. His eyes were forward, unreadable, and his jaw was tight. Before she could ask if he was okay, he turned and walked off down the hallway, long strides that made her feel small and clumsy. Chloe stood frozen for a moment, staring after him. Her wrist still tingled from his grip, and her chest ached, not from exhaustion, but from the unexpected, sharp jolt of something she hadn't anticipated. That man, he was entirely unremarkable in some ways, ordinary in posture, ordinary in clothes. But there was something about the way he moved, the quiet precision in his gaze, the hint of annoyance barely masking a presence. She shook her head, muttering to herself, "Get a grip, Chloe." But she couldn't stop thinking about him. Not his face, not the cut on his lip, not even the firm pull of his hand. It was everything at once. And as she finally turned toward her own apartment, she knew, reluctantly and a little unwillingly, that she had already noticed him. And now, she couldn't forget. Chloe had just hung up her jacket and kicked off her scuffed sneakers when the realization hit her like a punch to the chest. Min-jun, the man she had collided with, the one whose wrist she'd fought against, whose bleeding lip she couldn't stop thinking about, lived next door. Her heart sank and jumped at the same time. Of course he lived next door. Of course. Why wouldn't he? The universe had apparently decided that not only would she see him in passing, she'd have to breathe the same hallway air as him. Maybe even hear him move furniture or do whatever quiet, disciplined things stoic men did behind closed doors. She debated whether to pretend nothing happened, to just quietly apologize with a smile in the hallway if she ran into him again. But the guilt gnawed at her like a persistent itch she couldn't scratch. That cut on his lip, it had been her fault. And even if he didn't look at her, even if he pretended it was nothing, she needed to fix it. Taking a deep breath, Chloe crossed the hallway and knocked on his door. 1, 2, 3 short taps. She waited. Her heart thumped painfully loud in her chest, like it was trying to escape. The door swung open. He was standing there, quiet, perfectly composed, dark hair slightly mussed at the edges like he had just run a hand through out of habit. His eyes were calm, unreadable, and for a moment Chloe felt like he could see straight through her chest. She trailed off, flustered. Words fled her. "I just wanted to apologize for earlier. The collision." He raised a hand, flat and calm. "It's fine." Before she could even finish the sentence, before she could add anything about the cut, the hallway, or how bad she felt, the door clicked shut in her face. Chloe blinked, stunned. The door was closed, and he was gone. She stood there for a moment, jaw tight, fists curling at her sides. Frustration bubbled up first. He hadn't even let her finish. And then, unexpectedly, something else hit her. A small, prickling heat at the base of her throat. Annoyed at herself, she muttered, "Oh my God, he's kind of cute." Why did she think that? Why did she care? She had been exhausted, annoyed, and yet the guilt, the cut on his lip, the way he had looked at her, it all lingered. She couldn't stop replaying it in her mind. The quiet intensity of his voice. The unexpected weight of his wrist in her hand. That subtle jawline, pale against the harsh hallway lighting. And she hated herself for it. Hated herself, and maybe, just maybe, wanted them all at once. Chloe let out a soft, frustrated sigh and backed into her apartment. She leaned against her door, arms crossed, thinking about the thin line she'd just crossed between pride, guilt, and desire. She didn't know which one she would act on first, but she knew this. She couldn't forget him. Not now. Not ever. The hallway was quiet. But in Chloe's mind, Minjun's image refused to leave. Chloe decided that if she wanted to make things right, and maybe secretly get a little closer to Minjun, she was going to have to try. Not just a polite apology, not just fleeting hallway nods. She needed a plan. Well, her version of a plan. The next morning, armed with a giant cup of coffee, she had painstakingly convinced the barista to make extra strong. Chloe stationed herself near the elevator. She pretended to scroll on her phone, pretending to be completely absorbed, though her eyes flicked up every few seconds to see if he appeared. When the elevator dinged and the door slid open, there he was. Minjun, walking with that effortless, deliberate stride that somehow made Chloe's knees wobble despite herself. "Oh, hey. Morning," she called, overdoing the brightness in her voice. He glanced at her. Brief, neutral. "Morning," he replied. Nothing more. Chloe didn't give up. She stepped into the elevator as if she'd accidentally gotten on the same floor. "Fancy seeing you here," she said, grinning. She could feel her heartbeat hammering in her ears. He didn't respond. He didn't even shift. Not discouraged. No, Chloe was determined. The hallway became her stage. She accidentally bumped into him multiple times. In front of the mailboxes, near the trash chute, even in the laundry room, where she pretended to fumble with her detergent. Every encounter, she tried to make herself funny, charming, or at least memorable. Sometimes she brought him coffee she didn't even know he liked. Large, strong, with an extra shot of sugar. He accepted the cup quietly, gave a small nod, and returned to whatever business he had, unflinching. Chloe, frustrated but undeterred, took her next move with full commitment. She was balancing a laundry basket one evening, determined to appear graceful and collected. The basket slipped. Socks and underwear spilled across the floor. Chloe cursed under her breath, tripping slightly over a sock. Minjun was there in a flash. He bent down to help her pick up the clothes. She swore again, and then, just for a heartbeat, he let out a short, restrained laugh before clearing his throat and straightening up. Chloe froze, staring at him. He laughed. She blinked, unsure if she'd imagined it. But no, the corners of his lips had lifted, eyes crinkling ever so slightly. And then he walked away like nothing had happened. Her chest swelled with a mix of triumph and exasperation. Every time she got close, he had a way of leaving at the worst moment, but that laugh, just a tiny, almost hidden sound, was proof. Proof that he wasn't as untouchable or cold as he pretended to be. Chloe clenched her fists, a grin spreading across her face. This only made her more determined. If a stoic man like Minjun could laugh, even once, then maybe, just maybe, he could be won over. And she wasn't going to stop trying. Chloe was stacking trays behind the counter, her hair tucked into a messy bun, when the bell above the Burger King door jingled. She glanced up, expecting the usual stream of customers looking for quick lunch or late-night fries. But then her stomach dropped. It was him, Minjun, her neighbor, her stoic, unshakable, utterly frustrating neighbor. For a moment, Chloe just froze, her hands clutching a tray of wrappers like a lifeline. Her mind raced. What was he doing here? Did he want food? Did he just happen to be passing by? Before she could even think, her instinct took over. Wait, come here, she called, waving him toward the counter with more enthusiasm than she'd intended. He raised an eyebrow, but followed, walking past the few customers who had glanced curiously at the interaction. Chloe practically dragged him to the center of the counter, spinning on her heel to face her coworkers. "Everyone, meet my boyfriend," she announced, throwing her arms toward him with dramatic flair. Her coworkers blinked, then burst into laughter. "Wow, he's really handsome," one of them said, eyes widening. "Where did you even find him?" Chloe's cheeks flushed pink, but she stood taller, basking in the attention. Min-jun, to her complete shock, didn't protest. He didn't even frown. He simply gave a small nod, calm and composed, as if he were exactly where he belonged, playing along with whatever ridiculous role Chloe had assigned him. Thank you," he said quietly, his voice low but clear. Chloe's heart skipped a beat at the sound. He didn't laugh or smile. At least, not fully, but there was a subtle warmth there, almost imperceptible, that made her stomach twist with excitement. Her coworkers continued to gush. Chloe basked in the glow, holding her head high, enjoying the thrill of seeing him so relaxed in a social setting. She motioned for him to take the order counter to complete his purchase, and he moved effortlessly, politely, and precisely, confirming the total with exact change. When he was finished, she hurried ahead to the door, practically skipping as she opened it for him. "Bye," she called, unable to hide her giddy smile. He stepped out beside her, the evening air cool against their skin. "Why did you do that?" he asked quietly, voice just above a murmur. Chloe glanced at him, still glowing from the display. "Do what?" she asked, feigning ignorance, though her heart was hammering. "The whole introducing me as your boyfriend thing," he clarified. "Oh, that?" she said lightly, shrugging with a mischievous grin. "I don't know, just felt like it would be fun." He shook his head slightly, a small, almost imperceptible smirk tugging at his lips. Chloe barely noticed. She was still caught up in the fact that he had gone along with it without complaint, without even questioning her. For a fleeting, breathtaking moment, Chloe imagined it. The two of them together, not awkward, not pretending, just together. She realized, with a little thrill, that this glimpse of possibility was intoxicating and entirely irresistible. Chloe knew that subtlety wasn't going to get her anywhere. If she wanted Min-jun to notice her, not just as the clumsy, apologetic neighbor, but as someone he might want close, she would have to put in some real effort. It started small. She cleaned her apartment more often, tossed her usual oversized t-shirts for something slightly fitted, picked colors she knew would stand out without screaming, "Look at me." She even tried curling her hair once, only to panic halfway through and shove the curling iron into the drawer. But it was a start, and the thought of him noticing it made her grin in the mirror. The hallway became her stage. She lingered longer than necessary when retrieving mail, slowly bending over to pick something up just as he passed. Sometimes she leaned against the doorway, idly stretching, pretending she was too absorbed in her own world to even notice him. But she was noticing him, every detail, his deliberate walk, the way he adjusted his bag strap, the faint crease that formed at the corner of his mouth when he thought no one was looking. Every conversation became an experiment. She found excuses to touch him, a light tap on his arm while laughing at a small joke, brushing against his shoulder when passing in the hallway. Each contact was casual, innocent, playful, or at least that was what she told herself. But her heart raced every time he didn't pull away. And he noticed. Of course he noticed. But he didn't say anything. Not a word. Not a glance that lingered longer than necessary. Stoic, always stoic. Chloe could feel the weight of his silence pressing down on her like a challenge. One night, after lingering in the hallway for an absurdly long time pretending to sort her mail, she finally lost patience. "Do you hate me?" she asked, voice sharper than intended, frustration mixing with genuine curiosity. Min-jun stopped in his tracks, turning slowly to face her. He stared at her for a long moment, eyes calm, unreadable. Then, finally, he said, "No." Chloe blinked, stunned. That's it. That's it, he replied quietly. And then, without another word, he turned and continued down the hallway. Chloe's heart thudded, a mix of relief, frustration, and something else she didn't want to name. The fact that he hadn't said more, hadn't laughed, teased, or even smiled, felt both maddening and tantalizing. The silence between them had grown thicker, heavier, almost alive. Every glance, every accidental brush, every lingering hallway moment now carried more weight than ever before. She clenched her fists lightly, feeling the heat rise in her chest. He wasn't cold. Not really. He was deliberate, patient, controlled, but he noticed everything she did. And that, Chloe realized with a small, thrilling jolt, meant she was getting somewhere. Somewhere terrifyingly close. The hallway was quiet, almost eerily so. Chloe's apartment door clicked shut behind her as she balanced her bag in one hand and a half-empty soda in the other. She had been running errands all day, trying to distract herself from the way Min Jun's silence, his calm gaze, and the memory of his small laugh had been crawling into her thoughts like an insistent shadow. And then she saw it. His door, slightly ajar. Her pulse jumped, a mix of nerves and something far more electric. She stopped in her tracks, debating. Should she turn away? Pretend she hadn't noticed? Her logical brain shouted yes. He might be busy, tired, or just private. But something deeper, impatient, daring whispered, go ahead. Chloe took a slow breath, then another, and finally she stepped inside. The apartment was dimly lit, a single lamp casting soft shadows along the walls. The faint scent of his apartment, wood polish, clean laundry, and something else she couldn't name, hit her immediately. It was strangely comforting and disarming all at once. Min Jun was sitting on the edge of the couch, legs crossed, eyes forward. He didn't turn to look at her at first. Chloe's stomach fluttered. I didn't mean to intrude, she said softly, voice low. She set her bag down, trying not to fidget too obviously. He finally looked at her. Calm, measured. He didn't scowl, didn't ask her to leave, didn't raise his voice. Just held her with those dark, steady eyes. Chloe swallowed. She stepped closer, almost hesitating, then reached out. Her hand brushed against his arm. Not playfully this time. There was no joke, no misstep, no awkwardness. Just a careful, tentative touch. He didn't flinch. Her heart leapt, nerves prickling down her spine. Slowly, she moved closer, her hand trailing slightly up his arm, fingertips brushing the fabric of his sleeve. Min Jun's gaze softened. Not a smile, not a laugh, but enough to make her chest ache. Then he leaned in, not aggressively, not in a hurry, but deliberately, with a careful patience that made her pulse race. He pulled her closer, a subtle shift that closed the distance between them. Their shoulders pressed together, and the air between them seemed to hum with the tension they had built for weeks. The teasing, the lingering touches, the stolen glances. The door, left slightly ajar, closed behind them with a soft click. Neither moved to open it. Neither spoke. Chloe let herself breathe him in, feel the warmth of his presence, and finally understand that they had crossed a line, deliberately, carefully, together. For the first time, she didn't feel awkward, clumsy, or desperate. She felt electric. And in that quiet apartment, with him so close and yet so restrained, Chloe knew they had stepped into something new, dangerous in its intensity, but impossible to turn away from. Chloe stirred awake, the morning light seeping through the thin curtains, soft but enough to make her squint. For a brief, dizzying moment, everything felt right. She felt warm, safe, and impossibly close to Min Jun. Their limbs were tangled under the covers, his chest against hers, his arm draped lightly over her waist. She let herself linger in the rare intimacy, half asleep, heart still fluttering from the closeness they had finally allowed themselves the night before. The quiet hum of the city outside the window, the faint scent of his apartment, the soft sound of his steady breathing, it all felt surreal, almost fragile. Chloe felt a small smile tug at her lips. For once, there was no awkward hallway collision, no accidental coffee delivery, No teasing or tension. Just them. Then came the first bang. Bang. Chloe's eyes snapped open. Her heart jumped. Bang. Bang. The pounding at the door wasn't tentative. It wasn't polite. It shook the wooden frame, reverberating through the apartment. Min Jun stood beside her, calm and composed, almost eerily so. "Chloe," he said, voice steady low. "Open it." Her fingers froze on the blanket. Her mind screamed, "Who? Why?" But the firmness in his tone left no room for argument. Reluctantly, she swung her legs off the bed and padded over, the room spinning slightly as adrenaline surged through her veins. The door swung open before she could knock, and chaos erupted. Men in black stormed in. Hard. Fast. The first set of hands grabbed her shoulders, shoving her against the wall. Her scream caught in her throat. "Min Jun," she yelled, struggling, twisting, her pulse hammering in her ears. She clawed at the firm grip on her arms, trying to push back, to understand what was happening, but the pressure was unrelenting. One of the agents held up a photograph. "Do you know this man?" Chloe's heart dropped. She stared, and then recognition hit like a punch to the stomach. It was him, Min Jun, her neighbor, her almost boyfriend, the man she had been laughing with, flirting with, trying so desperately to reach. Instinctively, she pointed to the bedroom. He's in there." The agents didn't hesitate. They rushed past her, weapons and hands moving with precise urgency. Chloe's knees threatened to buckle. Panic coiled tight in her chest. She watched as they opened the bedroom door and froze. The bed was empty, the sheets rumpled. The warmth she had felt a few moments ago, the body she had clung to, was gone. Chloe sank to the floor, trembling, disbelief and dread washing over her. She sank against the wall, fingers clutching at her hair. The quiet intimacy of just minutes ago had shattered into chaos, confusion, and fear. Min Jun, the man she had finally gotten close to, was gone. And somehow, she knew this was only the beginning. Chloe sat on the cold floor of the police precinct, her wrists stinging from the metal cuffs biting into her skin. She felt numb, shaking, angry, and terrified all at once. Her hair was messy, her clothes wrinkled from the struggle, and her eyes burned from both tears and disbelief. An agent leaned over her, voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, do you know this man?" He held up the photograph again. Chloe's stomach sank. She didn't have to look twice. Min Jun, the neighbor she had collided with in the elevator, the man she had teased, chased, and finally touched. The man she had just woken up next to a few hours ago. I don't understand," Chloe stammered, voice cracking. "There's some mistake. He's my neighbor. We were..." Her words died in her throat. She couldn't even finish the sentence, couldn't find the words to explain that it had been real to her, even if only for a night. The agent shook his head. "This man is wanted for multiple cases of fraud, multiple identities. This has been an ongoing investigation for months. You may have been used to gain access to him." Her chest tightened. "No, that's impossible. He couldn't." Her phone buzzed on the floor nearby. She scrambled for it with trembling hands, hoping for a lifeline, a text, anything that would make this a misunderstanding. Instead, she found her bank account open. Every cent gone. Empty. Her savings, every last dollar, drained. Chloe's knees gave way, and she slumped back against the wall. Her breath came in sharp, uneven gasps. She couldn't believe it. The apartment where she had finally felt safe, where she had laughed, flirted, and let herself get close, stripped bare. Not a single trace of him remained. No clothes, no personal items, not even the faint scent of his presence she had memorized. Her mind flashed back, painfully, to the morning. His calm, steady voice, "Open it." How she had trusted him without question, how she had obeyed without hesitation. And now nothing. She buried her face in her hands, trembling. The memories that had once made her heart flutter, the collision, the awkward apologies, the playful attempts, the shared laughter, the lingering touches, now felt like a cruel trick. The cut on his lip that had sparked their first apologies. The apologies that had led to stolen moments, to whispered confessions, to intimacy. And now, all of it, twisted into a chain that ended here. Handcuffs, betrayal, and emptiness. If only she hadn't tried to make it up. If only she had stayed away, avoided the hallway, ignored the playful glances, the teasing smiles. If only. The precinct was quiet around her, but Chloe's world had shattered. The warmth, the excitement, the fleeting intimacy she had allowed herself, it was gone. And all that remained was the bitter sting of regret, the memory of a man she had loved and who had disappeared. A huge thank you for watching until the very end. If you want more stories like this, please help the channel grow by subscribing. Click the bell so YouTube lets you know when I post. See you soon, lovelies.